Welcome to Football Conspiracies.
I'm Jared Cole.
And I'm Jared Rabinovich.
This week's episode, Ben Roethlisberger.
All right, J. Cole, got any juicy content for us today?
Yes, I do. I didn't see this until recently, but on November 24th in a college football game, for the first time ever, a team won with 0 passing yards.
How? What team?
The Air Force Falcons, they beat Nevada and 22-19. Like, they had over 300 rushing yards. But their quarterback had 3 attempts, zero completions, 1 interception.
So was the quarterback just playing poorly and they're just running rushing plays the entire time?
Yeah, the quarterback, the 2 different running backs for Air Force had over 20 carries.
That's actually insane. Like, what like a star game for the running backs, I suppose, but like his arm must be shit for them not to trust him like that. It was rivalry week. Like, I guess they were like just putting out their best plan.
This was November 24th.
Oh, this was okay, understood. Either way, that's just insane.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Never heard of something like that before, but the world of college football can bring you anything.
Yes, it is wild.
Yes.
But yeah, there you go.
All right.
That's what I have.
mean, yeah, I appreciate a weird stat anytime you could find one. All right, so on to the main bulk of the episode. Based on today's title, I think it's possible that a lot of you listeners began this episode with the impression that we'd be bringing you another one of our, classic players and their beliefs episodes. However, that will not be the case today. Ben Roethlisberger is one name that constantly shows up in the process of doing research for this podcast. It might be a little surprising to some people, but this is something that kind of surprised me when I started doing research, but this guy comes up everywhere, and often not in the most flattering of terms.
Like, because he believes in conspiracies, or he's at the center of the conspiracy?
It's not that he believes in conspiracies, and it's not even necessarily that he's at the center of... I don't know if you know anything about his unsavory past. We'll definitely be getting into that now, but it's more that he somehow finds himself in the middle of all these whack-ass stories, like, constantly. I don't know how it happens to him. Like, do you know your friend who's just, like, constantly their life should be filmed? It's a movie?
Yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger is that friend.
Yeah.
So, just a quick briefer on who the guy is, for those less familiar with football. Roethlisberger was the longtime quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was at the helm of the team from 2004 all the way to 2021. In this time, he won 2 Super Bowls. And this is a fun fact I found. Throughout his entire career, Ben Roethlisberger never received a single MVP vote. Isn't that kind of crazy?
No, like, he was always good, but there was always better.
Sure, but like in one of the 2 seasons where he wins a Super Bowl, you think maybe he'd get 1 vote.
Yeah, I guess 0 is crazy.
Exactly. How often does the star quarterback of a franchise team that's won Super Bowls never get an MVP pick? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is wild.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, obviously, I don't think there's a point in his career where he ever deserved an MVP, but a single vote, you think someone would have thrown him a bone at some point. Damn. Least, these guys did not like him. Yeah, and like we were mentioning earlier, it's not that his beliefs are incredibly wacky, like Mac Hollins or Jim Harbaugh per se. Rather, Roethlisberger seems to find his way into some crazy situations, or has been the perpetrator of some awful shit himself. Roethlisberger is one of the most influential and talented NFL players of his time, I would say. He was so long-lived, and he was just a household name at some point. And it seems that this reputation of his has done a lot to cover up some of the more unsavory aspects of the man's life. Today, I want to share with you listeners all of the stories I've collected about Big Ben since the beginning of this podcast. As I've done research for other episodes, every time I've come across an article about Roethlisberger, I put it aside knowing that one day I would be making this episode, a culmination of everything I have found about this man. So without further ado, let's get into it. I want to begin this episode by speaking about the darkest part of Roethlisberger's legacy, just to get this out of the way, and so everything else that we're talking about, will be prefaced. Because, later we're going to be speaking about some pretty silly stories about this guy, And I just want to make sure the listeners hear who he really is first so they don't get a false impression through some of the levity that we'll experience in the latter part of this episode. I want to also preface this section by saying we will be speaking about allegations of sexual assault. If this is something you don't want to listen to, I recommend skipping ahead right about now. The main source of this portion of the episode is an article published on HuffPost, written by Stephen A. Crockett Jr., like the most posh name I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Insane. It has the title of Ben Roethlisberger Should Be Remembered for Exactly Who He Is. You know this guy is getting lambasted here. The story details the allegations of sexual assault leveled against Roethlisberger. In 2009, a woman filed a civil suit alleging that she was raped by Roethlisberger at a hotel where she worked. In this incident, the woman claims that Roethlisberger called up for help with his TV, and I'm quoting now. In this incident, the woman claims that Roethlisberger called up for help with his TV, and
when the woman arrived, he blocked the door, refusing to let her leave. The woman claimed that Roethlisberger threw her on the bed and raped her. The case was settled out of court in 2012.
Yeah, so I mean, this is horrible. Like, just on the face of it, there's no getting around this.
No.
And in 2010, another sexual assault allegation was leveled against Roethlisberger. Again, we are quoting from the same article.
In 2010, the then 28-year-old quarterback was partying at a college bar in Midgeville, Georgia. A college student claimed that Roethlisberger was plying her and her friends with shots. She said that his bodyguard grabbed her and took her to the hallway, where the quarterback was waiting with his penis out.
Yeah, like, I don't know what to say about this. This is just fucking horrible. Fuck these guys for using their power to get women into vulnerable positions, and fuck Ben Roethlisberger. So, we need to get this out of the way, obviously. And this situation, unfortunately, does get a little worse. After seeing this, Roethlisberger exposing himself, the woman went into the first door that she saw to try and get out of there. The door happened to lead into a bathroom. At this point, she alleges that Roethlisberger followed her into the bathroom and shut the door. After saying no to him and telling him that this was not okay, he proceeded to have sex with her against her will. The woman chose not to go forward with the case as she was afraid of the negative media attention she would inevitably had come her way. After the first allegation, the NFL did nothing to punish Roethlisberger. In 2010, following the second set of allegations, the NFL gave Roethlisberger a 6-game suspension, which was ultimately reduced to a 4-game suspension because of quote-unquote good behavior.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, 6-game suspension is nothing in the grand scheme of things, and to give him a 4-game suspension due to good behavior after allegedly raping 2 women, not a good look for the NFL.
Very bad.
I'm now going to take a quite long quote from the article I've been referencing. I know it's pretty lengthy, but I think this does a really good job of explaining the corrupt nature of the NFL, particularly when it comes to its treatment of its players and the people who their players hurt.
And just like that, Roethlisberger was back in the game because apparently the NFL only cares about itself. Women are expendable at the altar of professional football. Even the players themselves are at times treated as if they are disposable. All are deemed a necessary sacrifice as long as there are billions to be made. The NFL wants people to believe that it cares about its players and the lives they affect outside of football, but it doesn't. The league has been careless with players' health and has disregarded troubling antics that could be a direct result of head injuries. Look at recent outbursts from Antonio Brown, who either quit or was kicked off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, depending on who's telling the story. Look at Richie Incognito. In 2019, Incognito threatened to shoot up the funeral home responsible for burying his father if they didn't let him cut off his father's head. Police found guns in Incognito's truck. He was arrested. The NFL suspended him for 2 games, and he's currently playing for the Las Vegas Raiders. Or what about former tight end Kellen Winslow Jr., who reportedly masturbated in front of his teammates and carried a silicone mold of a woman's torso for reasons I have no interest in naming. The NFL gave him a pass. He's currently serving 14 years in prison for rape, and other sexual assaults against several women in Southern California. Of course, there are exceptions. The NFL really cared about Janet Jackson's nipple after it was exposed during the 2011 Super Bowl halftime show, and in 2014 when a video surfaced that appeared to show former Baltimore Ravens running back Ray Rice assaulting his then-fiancée, now wife, Janae Palmer. I fully believe there have been no cameras to capture Rice hitting Palmer and then dragging her limp body over the elevator. Rice would still be playing in the NFL. But everyone saw the horrible video, and that forced the NFL to come out strongly. But I may as well be writing this column in invisible ink because the NFL doesn't care about my opinion. It functions like a private city with its own government, judges, town hall, and police force. It operates outside of the real world and doesn't follow societal norms. Never forget that Goodell, the one who's supposed to hold the NFL teams and players accountable, is paid by the NFL. That's right, NFL owners pay Roger Goodell to police the league, which is hiring a cocaine addict K9 to sniff out drugs.
Yeah, so I think it's probably pretty clear to most of the listeners and you, J. Cole, why I decided to leave that in, even though it's quite lengthy. I think this guy does an incredible job of articulating a lot of my thoughts about the NFL's corrupt nature regarding how they treat the way their players commit crimes consistently. And
yeah, and they just get away with it.
They get away with it. I mean, like, Michael Vick comes to mind. You know, if he wasn't, ringed up in court, he would probably have played in the NFL, no problem. And Ray Rice is a great example, right? Like, I think if people had heard it without that horrifying video coming out, I think he's right. This would have been no problem for the NFL and Roger Goodell and his ilk, which is just frankly horrifying, and I think lends to a lot of the reason why this podcast is necessary. I think the NFL has cultivated a pretty dangerous community in a lot of ways, which is a shame considering I think the bulk of NFL fans are really good-hearted people who are here for a fun community that's just trying to celebrate athleticism and a game we all love.
There's no doubt that the NFL's letting these bad apples get through, but, like, why?
Because it's about the money, and
yeah.
This article was written a few years ago, and I don't think he'd be more right about his observation that his column was written in invisible ink.
Yeah, I mean, all his points still apply today, so.
Very unfortunately. And NFL, Roger Goodell, get your shit together. I know this was a very serious section of the podcast, but I could not have done the episode focused on Ben Roethlisberger justice without speaking about these allegations. They are truly horrifying, and I do not think his reputation has suffered in any large way because of them. So I just want to make all of our listeners well aware of this and let this taint your perspective on the man, because frankly, I think he deserves it. Now we're going to move on to the more, football conspiracies aspect of this episode. A few more light stories about Ben Roethlisberger, and if you are one of those listeners who decide to skip ahead, this is about where you should be tuning back in. The next story we're going to be speaking about is truly in the vein of completely melted conspiracy content we have come across before. The story actually gives the same vibes as the Bill Belichick double agent theory. This is an episode that we covered a while back, and just a truly melted theory. Not only is it the same sort of wacky tale, it also comes from a Reddit comment section, so it's equally as reliable.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only place to find reliable sources.
Honestly, I spend so much of my time deep in the Reddit comment section solely so I could find this sort of juice. It's beautiful. This particular theory comes from a Reddit thread titled Best Kept Secrets in Pittsburgh. The original poster goes on to ask the question, what is there around the Burgh that you think is great that not many people know about? Things to do, places to eat, things to see, etc. Evidently, it does not seem like U/J Magera CSR 12, I know, handful of a name. It doesn't seem like he understood the assignment exactly, but that did not stop him from getting the most upvoted comment in his thread by an absolute long shot. This guy was asking for, holes in the wall to eat, and this is what he gets. A perfect welcome to Pittsburgh, as far as I'm concerned. U/J Magera CSR 12's theory goes a little something like this. In 2006, the Rooney family, the owners of the Pittsburgh Steelers, were in a bit of a family squabble, secession-style shit. It's awesome. Dan Rooney wanted to keep the franchise, while some of his brothers were interested in selling the team, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Having won the 2006 Super Bowl, they figured this would be, the perfect time to offload with the team. It would have an inflated price.
Yeah.
Eventually, it was decided that the brothers would sell their shares to Dan Rooney for $128 million apiece in 2008. So this agreement was made in 2006 that in 2008 they would offload with their shares and sell them to their brother Dan.
It doesn't make sense to me why anyone would ever want to sell a professional sports team. Like that thing is only ever going to increase in value. Like, why don't you just, take a step away and hire someone else to do your job and still make hundreds of millions of dollars?
I do get it, because it's a little bit like smog, sitting on the pile of gold. At some point, you got to get rid of it, or it's not going to bring any value to your life. And these guys figured, $128 million, that's me, the next generation, and the next generation of my family living comfortably. I'd probably take the offload for $128 million. I get it would be more 10 years from now, but, I'm going to be rich as fuck regardless, so who cares?
Yeah, but I mean, an NFL team values increase more than, S&P 500. It's a better investment long term.
That is true. If you're going to be investing this money, you should have just kept it in the NFL team, especially, if we're talking, if they want to offload with the Steelers now, 20 years later, $128 million in a share, chump change.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, they're missing out on,
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's a third of what it should be each.
Yes, probably. It's brutal if you're looking at it from, a long-term investment perspective, but if they're just looking to offload and fuck off into the sunrise with $130 million each, I respect that decision.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
Especially since their families own this franchise either since the beginning or since the 70s or something like that. So, they've been sitting on this for a while.
Even more of a reason not to sell, in my opinion.
And they're keeping the family anyway.
Okay, yeah.
Right? They're going right to their brother. I don't know what the relationship is between them, but...
Yeah.
So, like I was saying, they made this deal that 2 years later they'd be selling their shares for $130 million each. But, as U/J Megara CSR 12 puts it, this is when tragedy struck. On June 13th, 2006, just a few weeks after this deal was struck, Ben Roethlisberger, the young quarterback who just led the Steelers to their first championship since 1979, crashed his motorcycle into a car. To make matters worse, Roethlisberger was not wearing a helmet. Crazy stuff. I had no idea this had happened.
Well, we talked about this before. It was the reason he crashed was because he endorsed Chunky Soup.
Okay, wait, that is true. I forgot that Chunky Soup, that this played into the Chunky Soup curse, but I guess this motorcycle crash plays a part in more than one melted conspiracy.
Yeah, whoa, it's...
But according to this Reddit user, this one's one of the best kept secrets in the burg, so...
Okay, let's hear it.
Following the crash, the public had little information regarding Roethlisberger's condition. A few days later, Roethlisberger released a statement saying he was okay, but that he was lucky to be alive. He was in serious condition. This was a very bad crash, and a lot of people say if he was wearing a helmet, it wouldn't have been so serious of a crash. So, I mean...
Obviously, helmet saves lives.
Exactly, not a shocking statement. I mean, even Kanye wasn't even too cool for the safe belt, so... But here is where the twist comes in. According to the theory, Roethlisberger did not release that statement. As a matter of fact, he died in that motorcycle crash on 2nd Avenue. J. Cole's nodding at me because he knows this is where we have to come in.
Well, I mean, they did the same thing with Damar Hamlin, but that's besides the point.
Much larger investigation for another episode. The theory continues. On the day of the accident, Dan Rooney was out of town. But two of his brothers, two of the guys who were trying to sell the team to Dan Rooney, got to the hospital immediately and, with the help from local authorities, managed to cover up Roethlisberger's death from the public. At this point, the Rooney brothers enlisted a Roethlisberger lookalike, a car salesman and small-time criminal named Brian Jackson, to stand in for Roethlisberger. While Brian Jackson did not have the same athletic capabilities, he still managed to get himself into form and win another Super Bowl for the Steelers just a few years later in 2009. And the Rooney brothers were able to successfully offload their shares in 2008 to Dan Rooney. So, what do you think of this one, J. Cole? One of the best kept secrets in the burg.
Wow, I will say that Brian Jackson has, it's a shame he had to go under Ben Roethlisberger because he could have had his own insane career.
Yeah, I know, honestly, right? Like, this guy could have been...
Like,
all it took was a couple of years of conditioning to get him into...
Yeah, to get into Super Bowl winning form.
Yeah, let me show you this guy just to so you can see how alike he looks to Ben Roethlisberger. I just want your assessment of this too. This is him. Like don't get me wrong. Like, Roethlisberger's a big guy with a prominent nose and chin.
Like, they have maybe very very similar, but definitely not the same person.
Yeah, like, if I were to describe them on paper, they'd sound the exact same.
Yeah.
Right, 100%. Like, and he has the build to be Ben Roethlisberger. I see that. Same face shape and all that. But Ben Roethlisberger, like, in Pittsburgh for 15 years was, like, maybe the most famous person in the city. Like, you were recognizing him. And this guy, Brian Jackson, was not getting away with it. But according to this theory...
Yeah, there he is.
There he is, Brian Jackson, the true Ben Roethlisberger. And Super Bowl winner, Brian Jackson.
Super Bowl winner, Brian Jackson.
Exactly. He's done more than I ever will, so... Either way, like, I mean, I thought this was, like, one of my favorite theories I've come across in a while.
Yeah,
like, this
was a good one.
This was beautiful. I found it ages ago, and I was just like, this theory is absolutely fucking incredible. I need to figure out a reason to talk about this on the podcast, because...
Now you got a reason.
How ridiculous. And there are some aspects of truth to this. You know, Roethlisberger did get into that bad accident while not wearing a helmet. And this guy, Brian Jackson, is not entirely fabricated. Like, he's a real dude. But we'll get more into his story a bit later. Now we're going to move on to our next story. We're going to be speaking about a beautiful article I found while nosing my way through the muck that is the Wayback Machine. This article was published in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and written by Jonathan D. Silver. The title is Man Accused of Impersonating Steelers Quarterback. This article was posted back in July of 2005, and the last screenshot of it I could find on the Wayback Machine. It comes from August 2015. Why this article was taken down is beyond me. It should straight up have a Pulitzer. Like this should be pinned to their top of their homepage even today, 20 years later. To paraphrase, the beginning of the article goes something like this. He's not 6'5", he's not 23, he doesn't wear number 7, and he doesn't have a goatee. In fact, he doesn't resemble Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger in any way. But that didn't stop him from duping a woman into believing he was Big Ben in order to go out with her, authorities said. Now he has a date of a different kind. In court. Come on.
Nice.
Yeah, good article.
Yeah.
We're
that's how you hook them in.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you read that and you know you're pulling me in. Good hook, man. I appreciate you. This is why journalism is a dead art. I need more shit like this. And here's about how the story goes. The man approached a woman named Mary Groft in a pizza parlor while wearing sunglasses and a hat. He told Groft that he was a friend of Roethlisberger and that she was exactly his type. He gave her his number, telling her it was Roethlisberger's, and they proceeded to set up a date. On the day of the date, he showed up to Groft's house and gifted her with an autographed jersey, then posed with her neighbor for a picture and signed his jersey as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like, this man who's a fan of the Steelers, has a Ben Roethlisberger jersey, noticed him, and, got to get a signature. That's crazy. I thought this was such a funny detail that later got brought up in the story. Later, once this was all uncovered, he was fined with criminal mischief for ruining the jersey.
Oh, that's why he got in trouble.
No, he got in trouble for more. That was just, an added-on thing.
Oh, okay.
And, he had to pay back, the $75 that the jersey cost or something. Just a silly aspect of the story.
Yeah.
Upon returning home from this date, Groft saw an article about Roethlisberger in the newspaper, and, there's a picture there. She figured out she was being tricked. This is not the same guy. She then cut off contact with him, but, this guy being, obviously creepy to begin with, he continued to contact her, and the authorities had to get involved to deal with that. But what is even crazier about this article is that Roethlisberger is not the only Steeler that this man impersonated in order to get a date. In another incident, he went down the depth chart and impersonated Steelers' backup quarterback, Brian St. Pierre. And once again, let me pull up a picture of this guy, Brian St. Pierre, so Jared can tell us if these guys truly look alike.
Yeah, I mean, they're all, nondescript, chubby white guys.
Once
who
again.
are, built to be football quarterbacks. I don't know. They all kind of look the same.
No, I kind of
these
agree.
These three guys. They're similar, But I guess if you like only had like a passing guess of what the person looked like, I guess they would pass off for each other.
I agree. If you have like a passing knowledge about what this man looks like and a general trust in humankind, this trick can definitely be pulled on you.
Yeah.
In this instance, the man exchanged phone numbers with Julie Vallow under the pretenses that he was Brian St. Pierre. So instead of, like tricking them, giving him the fake phone number this time.
Yeah, this time he just went straight in.
He went straight for the gold, And this is I think where the story gets a little bit crazier, because he went so much harder into the Brian St. Pierre impersonating than he did the Roethlisberger, because he knew he'd get away with a little bit more, considering it wasn't Big Ben. He apparently would go out, with Julie Vallow, he would sign footballs for local kids. Yeah. He would speak about his teammates, like he knew them, and even told Vallow when he was, like, going out of town for games. Like, oh, we can't see each other this week because I'm going to be in Philly playing the Eagles.
That's so funny.
Yeah, like, he went hard on this one.
Yeah, he, like, really put in the effort.
Exactly, and, like, I have absolutely no respect for him, but, like, to some extent, like, you gotta respect the premeditation of it all. I think he's a complete scumbag, but damn, like, he's thinking ahead.
Yeah, he definitely is, like, this is kind of psychopathic shit, though.
Oh, it's incredibly creepy. It seems like you would see it in you.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, like, my man's, like probably Boy Scout training, always prepared, And to quote quickly from the article, he even told her to watch a game, and this was his undoing. Vallow confronted him after the game, after seeing him on TV and realizing, that Brian St. Pierre guy is not the guy I've been dating. And he responded by telling her she is quote-unquote crazy and that he looks different on TV. She did not buy this, obviously, and cut off contact with him as well. That is the most fucking wild excuse. Like, that level of gaslighting is absurd.
That's ridiculous. I
Sheer
can't believe you said
absurdity.
Watch a game. Like, that's literally your undoing.
Exactly. And, like, it seems like she probably wouldn't have if he didn't say that.
Yeah, like, because obviously she hadn't before if he's telling her to now.
Exactly. And I don't have too many details on this story, but based on, like, how long the Julie Vallow dalliance went along, it makes it seem to me like she kind of genuinely liked this guy and probably might have dated him outside of him being a football player. And if he just, went up to her and introduced himself as who he is, as opposed to Brian St. Pierre, maybe, just maybe, he would have been dating this woman as himself.
Yeah, but that's rational thinking, and rational people don't impersonate Ben Roethlisberger or Brian St. Pierre.
That's a good point, because this guy, I'm not assuming he's rational.
Yeah, why would you choose Brian St. Pierre?
Well, because clearly the Ben Roethlisberger one didn't work out. Exactly.
I mean, you know why, but I mean, still, like, choosing to impersonate him,
Exactly. Like, I'm going to be honest. I had no fucking idea who that guy was until this episode.
Yeah, he's a backup quarterback behind Roethlisberger.
Yeah, and, like, back in, like 2010. Like, exactly. Yeah, like, I was not paying enough attention to football in 2010 to know who the backup quarterback for the Steelers are. Like, it's a little deep down the rabbit hole for me. So, throughout me telling you this story, you may have noticed that I've been avoiding mentioning the name of the perpetrator in this story, and that's for a reason. I wanted the most dramatic reveal possible. So, who was the mystery man? Brian Jackson, the same person who allegedly replaced Roethlisberger after his motorcycle accident in The Last Theory.
So he wasn't impersonating Roethlisberger. He actually is Ben Roethlisberger.
Isn't that insane? Like, the fact that I found these stories completely separately, and then I read the impersonating story, and I was like, wait, Brian Jackson? Isn't he the guy who, like, this Reddit user called out?
Yeah, that's wild.
So that's obviously why, the Brian Jackson part was melted into this theory later about him impersonating him.
Yeah,
there's obviously
there's the connection.
There's the connection, but when I read this article, I was actually flabbergasted. I was like, the dramatic reveal is beautiful, and the suspense built so much for me. I loved it. So quickly before we end off the Ben Roethlisberger segment, I'm just gonna share with you guys a bit more wacky stuff I found about Ben Roethlisberger, because, like I said, there's a lot of weird shit going on with this guy. So, on the 4th of July, 2017, Locker Dome published an article that claimed Roethlisberger had lost several fingers in a fireworks accident.
In an unfortunate event this afternoon, during a barbecue with friends, Pittsburgh Steelers All-Pro quarterback Ben Roethlisberger suffered a firework injury to his throwing hand. Initial reports state that Ben was holding a tape of some of his Super Bowl highlights, and they were so hot they burst into flames while still in his hand.
You remember this, right?
Yeah, I remember this exactly.
When Ben Roethlisberger lost his fingers.
Yeah.
That was like a famous moment in the football world. So, for those who are not familiar with Roethlisberger's career, this is obviously untrue, just blatantly a lie. But it tricked enough people that it warranted a fact check from Snopes, which I always find entertaining. Whenever I find a fact check from Snopes, I'm like, there's a handful of people who believe this.
Yeah.
Like, someone had to
actually believed this.
Yeah, like people who get paid to fact check and could be fact checking way more important things. Like, this is 2017. There was a lot of misinformation out there.
There's a lot of things going on in 2017.
Yeah, but some guy got paid to disprove this. For more astute readers of the original article, their bullshit detector may have gone off a little bit quicker. As Snopes points out, the article's byline was attributed to Happy Gilmore. So, yeah, obviously I think a little suspicious. And furthermore, this line is quoted from the second paragraph of the article.
In other reports coming out of the Steelers front office, this article was mainly written to scare the living shit out of Steelers fans you love/hate.
Yeah, so this was a meme article.
Yeah,
like, it was literally just like, send this to your friend, oh no, and then they'd get over it pretty quick, you know?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It was like the equivalent of like sending like, in high school, like sending like a fake bomb threat to your friend, then you'd open it, it was that guy with the massive schlong.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all remember that. The last thing we need to discuss today is, and I know this might sound weird, it's about Ben Roethlisberger's locker. Like, his locker in the Steelers locker room. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have no clue.
Yeah, this is weird. I've never heard of a setup like this, but towards the end of his playing days, Roethlisberger actually had two lockers in the Steelers locker room. They were in a corner perpendicular to one another. This kind of reminds me, like, for anyone who has seen the show, this reminds me of Zava's double locker setup that he gets in Ted Lasso.
Okay, yeah.
You remember he has, like, the lockers in the corner, gets his whole, like, own space? It kind of sounds like, based on descriptions, this is exactly what the setup in the Steelers locker room was. The first locker appeared to be, rather typical. And this is all based on former Steelers players' words, right? So the first locker was pretty normal. It was full of cleats and other such equipment. It was jerseys, whatever. But the other locker was, a bit of an oddity. I will now be quoting from Hallie Grossman in an article titled Ben Roethlisberger Hiding in Plain Sight, published on ESPN.
Upon further inspection, the right wall of the locker is, in fact, a door. And on that door hangs a hook. Resting on that hook is a black string, and when you pull that string, it swings the door open, and like a portal that delivers would-be snoops to Roethlisberger's own private Narnia. A few square feet between the banks of lockers and the wall that serves his quiet refuge on the locker room bustle.
So isn't that insane? He has, like, his own room in the locker room that's behind a locker.
I think this kind of just sounds like he has like a string tied on his locker room door, and and he opens it and it's like opens like a normal locker that he just has his stuff in.
That's what it sounds like.
Another room.
But apparently there's a few feet behind there, and like a few square feet behind there, where he'll just like hang out, or I guess would just hang out, and like let me explain. Like, apparently the contents of this second locker are like completely top secret. Nobody knows. There is a story of TJ Watt being in the locker room and like being completely alone and being like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna fucking do it. I'm gonna pull this string. I'm gonna see what's behind there. And he pussied out at the last minute. He couldn't do it. He was just like, yeah, like he's like, I'm not disrespecting the vet like that.
Wow.
Right. But TJ Watt did further explain what he believes might be behind that locker. And he says that he thinks there's a full fridge inside the locker, and he also thinks there's likely speakers, as sometimes he'll hear music coming from there, while Roethlisberger is in his own little refuge. And here is a last little quote from the article.
Juju Smith-Schuster didn't even know there was a room until a month into the season when he saw Roethlisberger emerge, phantom-like, from behind his locker. Yo, where'd you come from? He said to himself.
Like, imagine that, being a rookie on the team, and then all of a sudden...
Looking up, and Ben Roethlisberger just walks out of a locker.
Yeah,
That's
and apparently
crazy.
the locker was on the opposite side of the room from where the rookies would be, because he, like, wanted to be away. He was like, I'm too old for this shit. I wanted to be away from all the hustle and bustle, and he just wanted his, like, own little private refuge in his older age.
Yeah, I guess.
To, get in the zone and
do his
chill
thing
behind his locker.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what else, but hopefully nothing untoward.
Yeah.
I just thought that was, like, one of the wackier things. One of the, for sure, wackier accommodations I've seen an NFL team make for their player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you know what? Like, if I was an NFL player, like, this is a precondition in my contract.
Yeah, if I'm a top NFL player and I'm winning Super Bowls, I'm gonna be like, yeah, give me a room behind my locker where I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah, it's like
get in the zone before.
Not
like,
too big of a request for Ben Roethlisberger,
no,
right?
definitely not.
Like, yeah, like, take, like, 0.001 off of his salary, and you could afford a beautiful room for the man.
Alrighty, welcome to the end of the podcast where I have, like, the craziest thing for you, Jared, because it's right up your alley.
Okay.
It's, like, so up your alley. It's numerology and coincidences, and...
This is beautiful already.
So, I want to shout out at Jay Cutta on Twitter. He mostly does MLB and White Sox stats, but they're always, like, the stupidest, craziest, wildest, dumbest, amazing stats.
That's my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, and so he posted this. So we're currently in we just finished week 13 by the time this episode is in your ears. After the Arizona Cardinals and Atlanta Falcons had both played 11 games, a lot of coincidences were going on.
Okay, we got some bird coincidences.
Yeah. So the first coincidence is that both teams are named after birds. And the second one,
that's like literally like a 20% chance in the NFL you're named after a bird. Like, that's not that crazy.
The second big coincidence is that both teams, their primary color is red.
Okay, you have not hooked me yet, because, great. Wow, we have a 20% coincidence and a 50% coincidence.
Okay, after 11 games played, both teams had a record of 6-5.
Sure.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing crazy, yeah.
Both teams had scored 244 points.
Okay, that's a little weirder.
Both teams' quarterbacks start with the same letter of the first name.
Yeah, I guess.
Both teams' location starts with the letter A. Both teams are on the 33rd parallel for their latitude. Both teams made 19 field goals to that point. They had 23 extra points, both teams.
Okay.
Both of their logos, the bird faces right. Neither team has won a Super Bowl. Both teams have lost a Super Bowl, and both teams' head coaches played safeties in college.
Okay. I have a bunch of things to say. First things first, it is weird that there's not many coincidences, for sure. For sure. That's weird stuff. The number stuff specifically is weird. That being said, so many of this is just like an interesting game in statistics, right? Like, how many people's logos face right versus left? I don't know. Like, maybe it's more right versus left. How many cities in America are on the 33rd degree of latitude? Maybe it's a lot. I genuinely don't know. I think this, and like, how many teams are red? How many places start with an A? I'm pretty sure A is the number one statistical letter for a city to start with. This is such a fun game of statistics. You have brought me something beautiful here.
Yeah, I knew you'd like it. Yeah, but also, like, what are the odds that they're both bird teams too?
Yeah, no, that part. I think about literally 1 in 5 and 1 in 6.
Yeah, no, but Jay Cutta has, like, all these crazy stats, and he does, like, the research enough
That's
that,
what I'm
like,
thinking,
he knows that, like, both teams have made exactly 23 extra points after playing 11 games in the season. But, like, the 33rd parallel, like, where do you come up with that?
Yeah, I know, that's pretty weird. I'll give you that.
Both teams' head coaches played safety
in
college.
Exactly.
Like, like good research, crazy stats, but also like
where are that? Like, what are you doing to find these? It's like when you see those like crazy statistics, like flash up on ESPN, especially when you're watching baseball. Just like,
yeah, no, this guy is the king of that. Like, I kind of want to make him an apostle just because like this guy is the king of like ESPN
I love
stats
random
like
statistics.
That.
Like they are beautiful and they're completely meaningless and they help no one, but they entertain me, and that's all I'm really asking for in the end of the day.
I just want to show his most recent stat was the Bears have only hired people named Matt to be head coach in the last 7 or so years. Texans defensive coach Matt Burke has to be an early favorite to be the next.
That is pretty funny.
Matt Nagy fired. Matt Eberflus fired. Matt Burke?
Matt Burke? I don't know. Clearly it hasn't been working that well for him.
Another just mind-boggling what the fuck. Guys in the NFL with a name containing all the letters in the word turkey who played in the NFL this season.
How the hell did he think of that?
Yeah, and so there's like 6 guys here who have all the letters of turkey, like Treylon Burks and Kadarius Toney and Mitchell Trubisky.
That is such a, like, I could not think of more useless knowledge to have.
Yeah, and so he's the king of this type of stuff. And yeah, so crazy coincidences between 2 red NFC bird teams who both faced right.
Who both faced right. That's the craziest part to me. Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
You can find us on Twitter at FB Conspiracies, where we will post all the graphics and links we spoke about during this episode.
You can also reach us by email using fbconspiracies@gmail.com.
A special thanks to Blaze for the music.
If you enjoyed, consider leaving a review.
Join us next week for more football conspiracies.
Oh my god, fuck you, Red Zone.